Inside the mind, a trial can begin before the day has even spoken. One private sentence steps forward as prosecutor. Another sentence tries to defend the desired life. The body sits between them, waiting to hear which verdict will be believed. No one else can see this courtroom, yet it decides the state from which the next message is answered, the next choice is made, and the next hour is lived. A person may call it thinking, but often it is judgment. The whispered verdict says they are pulling away. The whispered verdict says money is slipping. The whispered verdict says you are late, unwanted, behind, or unsafe. The outer event may be small, but the inner voice enlarges it until it feels like a law. That is how a state is chosen without seeming to be chosen. This episode begins there, not with a method, but with the hidden tribunal of inner speech. If the words inside keep sentencing you to the old identity, no amount of outer evidence will feel stable for long. The moment evidence appears, the old voice will interpret it through the old state. The work is to change the voice that gets to announce who you are. The painful part is that inner speech often sounds like realism. It sounds as if it is protecting you from disappointment. It says, do not assume too much. It says, wait until life proves it. It says, rehearse the worst so it cannot surprise you. Yet after obeying that voice, the soul rarely feels protected. It feels smaller, tighter, and strangely loyal to the very condition it wants to leave. So the first open question is simple. What verdict has your inner speech been delivering before the world answers? Not the affirmation you repeat when you remember to practice, not the hopeful line written in a journal. The deeper verdict is the sentence that appears automatically when the phone is silent, when a bill arrives, when a face looks neutral, or when a plan takes longer than expected. Neville Goddard's ideas are often discussed through assumption, imagination, I am, and living in the end. In a modern commentary frame, one practical doorway into those ideas is inner speech. The private conversation is not decorative. It is the atmosphere where identity keeps being rehearsed. If the voice within speaks from lack, the mind keeps returning to the state of lack, even while saying spiritual words. Inner speech chooses the state because every inner sentence implies a self. The sentence, why does this always happen to me, implies oneself. The sentence, I know how to meet this from the end, implies another. The sentence, I am being ignored, forms a posture. The sentence, I am held in my chosen identity, forms a different posture. The words are small doors, and each door opens into a state. This does not mean every passing thought must be policed with fear. That would only create another courtroom. The aim is not to punish thought. The aim is to recognize the ruling voice. A human mind may produce many noises in a day, but not every noise becomes authority. The practice is to stop making the frightened sentence the judge. There is a clean distinction between observation and sentencing. Observation says, the message has not arrived yet. Sentencing says, this proves I am not chosen. Observation says, the account balance is lower than desired. Sentencing says, I am trapped. Observation says, the opportunity is uncertain. Sentencing says, I always lose. Inner speech becomes creative when it moves beyond facts and names identity. For this reason, the first practice is not to force positivity. Forced positivity usually argues with fear in the same courtroom. Instead, pause when the verdict appears. Hear it as a verdict, not as truth. The sentence may be loud, but loudness is not authority. Then ask, what would the fulfilled state say here if it did not need to perform? A woman named Elena offers a modern example. She designs brand systems for small companies, and she has been waiting on a client reply. The client sends a short message, let me review and get back to you. The words are neutral. Elena's inner courtroom is not neutral. Within seconds, the prosecutor begins. They hate it. They found someone better. You asked for too much. You are about to lose this. Elena does not answer the client yet. She answers the courtroom. She notices how quickly a short message became a verdict about her worth. This is the essential pause. If she replies from the prosecuted state, every word will carry apology. If she replies from the chosen state, the same practical response can carry steadiness. Nothing mystical needs to be exaggerated. The difference is already alive in the body. She places both feet on the floor and lets one sentence become available. I can remain the chosen professional before the reply is complete. It is not a demand placed on the client. It is an identity chosen inside her own field. From that state, she writes a simple response, clear and warm. The outer action is ordinary. The inner authorship is different. This is how inner speech begins to choose the state deliberately, not by shouting over fear, not by pretending the old sentence never appeared, by refusing to let the first frightened interpretation become the final word. A new verdict is entered, and the body is invited to live under that verdict for the next small action. A practical audit can be done today. Choose one recurring subject: love, money, work, health, family, or creative direction. Then write the 3 sentences that usually speak inside when that subject appears. Do not beautify them. Let them be honest. These sentences show the state that has been secretly practiced. They reveal the courtroom transcript. After that, write 3 replacement sentences, but make them natural rather than theatrical. The new inner speech should sound like a self who already belongs to the desired state. Not everything is magically perfect. Not life must obey by Friday. Something cleaner. I can meet this as the one who is already stable. I do not need this moment to name me. I move from the end now. The quality of the sentence matters more than the drama of it. A sentence spoken from panic is still panic, even if the words sound spiritual. A sentence spoken from settled identity can be plain and powerful. The body understands tone. It knows when words are being used as weapons against fear and when they are being used as a homecoming. SATs can support this because the drowsy state near sleep softens the usual defenses. Before sleep, allow one inner conversation to change. Hear someone congratulate you. Hear yourself answering calmly. Hear a simple line that implies the end is natural. Then stop. The purpose is not to perform a perfect scene. It is to let the deeper mind taste a new verdict before rest. Revision also belongs here. If the day contained an old inner speech pattern, revise the moment at night. See the same trigger. Hear the old verdict begin. Then hear the chosen self interrupt it with calm authority. Watch the body respond differently. This is not denial. It is training identity to take a new path when the old cue appears. A mature law of assumption practice keeps a grounded caveat close. Inner speech is not a remote control for other people. It does not cancel consent, skill, timing, or practical responsibility. It is a way of selecting the self who meets events. That selection can change perception, emotion, action, and persistence. Those are not small changes. They are the lived texture of a state. The next question is intimate. Whose voice has been living in your inner house? Sometimes it is a parent, a former partner, a teacher, a boss, an old failure, or a religious fear. The voice may no longer belong to anyone in the room, but it still speaks as if it owns the place. Inner speech work gently takes the house back. Taking it back does not require hatred for the old voice. The old voice may have formed around pain. It may have tried to keep you safe by expecting less, but safety built on permanent contraction is not freedom. At some point, the soul must ask whether protection has become a prison. A new sentence becomes the key. Try this during a trigger. First, name the old verdict. This is the voice that says I am not selected. Second, separate fact from identity. The fact is a delay. The verdict is rejection. Third, choose the state sentence. I remain the one who is chosen within. Fourth, act only after the body has taken one breath under the new verdict. This 4-step pause may look small, but it is a radical interruption. The old life often survives through speed. A fact appears, the old verdict fires, the body reacts, and the state is reinforced. Slowing down gives imagination a chance to enter. It gives the I am a chance to stop wearing the old name. Inner speech also shapes how success is received. Some people finally receive a good sign and immediately begin explaining why it will not last. The inner courtroom changes charges, but not tone. It moves from "you will never get it" to "you will lose it soon." The state is still insecurity. The fulfilled identity must learn to receive without cross-examining the gift. A useful line for receiving is, "This belongs to the state I have chosen. Let the good be normal. Let the calm be normal. Let respect, money, affection, timing, and opportunity be met without flinching." The old self may want to turn every blessing into a temporary accident. The chosen state lets good news sit down at the table. There is also a social layer. Speaking inwardly from the end will often change outward speech. You may stop over-explaining. You may stop apologizing for ordinary needs. You may stop filling silence with anxious paragraphs. The mouth follows the state. When inner speech becomes steadier, outer speech often becomes cleaner and kinder. This does not make anyone cold. It makes warmth less needy. It makes clarity less defensive. It makes patience less passive. The fulfilled state does not have to beg through language. It can speak simply because identity is no longer on trial. This is why a single inner sentence can change the tone of a whole relationship. For money, the practice is similar. The old verdict may say, "A bill means danger." A quiet replacement might say, "I handle numbers as the stable one." Then open the bill, make the call, plan the payment, or update the budget from that state. The act is practical. The spiritual work is the identity from which the act is done. For love, the old verdict may say, "Silence means abandonment." A wiser sentence might say, "I do not abandon myself in silence." Then the phone can be put down. The evening can be lived. A respectful conversation can happen later if needed. Assumption restores center before communication tries to solve everything. For creative work, the old verdict may say, "If it is not praised quickly, it is worthless." A new sentence might say, "I create as the one whose work has a place." Then the page can be finished. The portfolio can be sent. The practice can continue. Inner speech becomes the atmosphere that allows persistence. The bridge from inner speech to outer change is often ordinary. You answer differently. You choose differently. You see an opening that panic would have missed. You do not sabotage a good thing by interrogating it to death. You return after a setback instead of declaring the whole state false. These are natural consequences of a changed inner verdict. That is enough to make the practice worthy. It does not need reckless promises. It does not need deadlines. It does not need to turn Neville's ideas into a machine. It can remain mystical and grounded at once. Imagination selects identity. Identity shapes interpretation. Interpretation influences action, and action participates in the unfolding of life. Before sleep tonight, hold one subject in mind and listen for the first verdict. Do not argue, just hear it. Then let the host voice within, the calm voice, the chosen voice, speak a new sentence. Let it be brief enough to remember tomorrow. Let it be natural enough to believe for 10 seconds. 10 clean seconds can begin a new state. Tomorrow, use the sentence before the trigger rather than after the spiral. Before opening the inbox, speak from the end. Before checking the phone, speak from the end. Before entering the meeting, speak from the end. This is how inner speech stops being cleanup and becomes creation. The closing image is the courtroom again. For years, the old prosecutor may have spoken first, loudest, and last. But the judge was always attention. Attention can refuse the old verdict. Attention can hear another voice. Attention can choose the state before the world answers. The sentence within can become the door, so let the final instruction be simple. Do not let fear write the private caption under your life. Do not let delay name you. Do not let old memory deliver today's verdict. Speak inwardly as the one who already belongs to the fulfilled state, then take the next ordinary step from there. That is where the state begins to live. One quiet refinement makes this practice easier. The new sentence should fit the moment. If fear appears around work, speak as the capable one. If fear appears around love, speak as the cherished one. If fear appears around money, speak as the steady one. Specific inner speech enters the nervous system more cleanly than grand language that floats above the actual trigger. Another refinement is to stop collecting inner arguments. The old mind may want a full debate, but the fulfilled state does not need to win a debate before it can be occupied. Sometimes the most powerful move is to end the hearing. The verdict is chosen. The next action begins. When the old sentence returns, do not call the practice a failure. Return is part of training. A state becomes natural through repeated selection, not through one perfect performance. Each return says, this old verdict is no longer the final authority here. If a journal is used, keep it lean. Write the old verdict, the selected state, the new sentence, and the next action. 4 lines are enough. The goal is not to decorate the page. The goal is to transfer authority from fear to assumption. Over time, the inner courtroom becomes less dramatic. The prosecutor still appears, but the case feels weaker. The chosen voice has a record now. It has been practiced in small rooms, hard mornings, delayed replies, and ordinary bills. That record becomes confidence. The deepest sign of progress is not that every outer fact has changed. It is that the old verdict no longer possesses the whole body. Space appears. Choice appears. A new sentence appears before panic completes its speech. That space is the beginning of mastery. In that space, imagination is no longer an escape from life. It becomes the inner court where identity is chosen before life is met. The world may answer in time, through ordinary means and human complexity, but the state does not have to wait outside the door. There is another courtroom that deserves attention, the one that forms around memory. A memory appears, and the old voice says, "This proves how life goes for you." Maybe it is a memory of being overlooked, or laughed at, or left waiting, or needing help, and not receiving it. The memory is not merely remembered, it is used as legal precedent. Inner speech cites it as if the past has permanent jurisdiction over the present. Revision interrupts that misuse of memory. It does not need to deny what happened. It simply refuses to let an old scene keep sentencing the current I am. To revise this, choose one memory that still speaks inside with authority. See the scene for only a moment, then let the wiser self enter it. Maybe the younger self is no longer alone. Maybe the room is no longer hostile. Maybe the face that once judged you loses its power. Most importantly, hear the sentence change. Instead of "This is why I am not chosen," hear "This no longer names me." Instead of "I always lose," hear "That state is finished." The revised sentence does not erase the past. It changes the state the past is allowed to feed. Inner speech also deserves a practice of consecration in ordinary language. Before a difficult call, decide which voice is allowed to begin. Before a financial task, decide whether shame or steadiness opens the file. Before a romantic conversation, decide whether fear or love writes the first inner caption. This is a sacred use of attention, though it may happen in a kitchen, a car, or a hallway. The place does not need to look mystical. The moment becomes mystical because identity is being chosen where the old self expected to rule automatically. A helpful exercise is to give the old voice a name that is descriptive but not cruel. The alarm voice, the abandoned voice, the poverty voice, the proving voice. Naming it creates distance. When it speaks, you can say inwardly, "That is the alarm voice, not the voice of my fulfilled state." This prevents fusion. The sentence is no longer experienced as the whole self. It becomes a pattern passing through awareness, and awareness is free to choose another voice. Then give the new voice a quality rather than a slogan. The steady voice, the chosen voice, the provided voice, the beloved voice, the creative voice. Ask how that voice would speak in one ordinary sentence. The steady voice might say, handle the next number. The beloved voice might say, do not abandon yourself for a reply. The creative voice might say, finish the page before judging the future. These sentences are practical because they come from identity and move directly into conduct. There is a reason this has to be intimate. Public performance can hide private speech. Someone may look confident and still speak inwardly as if life is about to reject them. Someone may post bold words and privately rehearse collapse. The law of assumption is not impressed by theatrical volume. It concerns the state actually occupied. The private voice is often closer to the occupied state than the public declaration. That is why the work must enter the whisper, not merely the speech made for others. If this feels difficult, begin with 1 hour. For 1 hour, refuse to let the old verdict complete itself. You do not have to feel perfect. You do not have to monitor every thought. Simply catch the main sentence when it tries to name you. Interrupt it gently and choose the fulfilled sentence again. 1 hour of this is not small. It teaches the nervous system that the old voice can be heard without being obeyed. A second hour can be added later, then a morning, then a day. This is mental diet in a humane form. It is not punishment. It is nourishment. A diet is not only what is removed, it is what is repeatedly offered. Offer the mind sentences that carry dignity. Offer the body interpretations that do not collapse it. Offer the inner house a voice that belongs to the state you actually desire to inhabit. The courtroom image can also soften into a throne room. At first, the old prosecutor seems powerful because it has spoken for so long, but the deeper authority is not the prosecutor. It is the one who decides what is accepted. Attention is the throne. Imagination is the royal chamber where the state is selected. Inner speech is the decree that goes out from that chamber. This mystical image is useful because it restores rank. Fear may speak, but it does not have to reign. When outer evidence finally improves, keep practicing. Many people stop inner work the moment they receive a little relief, then wonder why the old state returns. Good news must be received by the new voice. Let the chosen voice say, yes, this is natural. Let the steady voice say, I can handle increase. Let the beloved voice say, I can receive without clutching. Receiving is also a state practice. Without it, the old voice may turn blessings into new anxieties. If outer evidence looks worse for a moment, keep practicing there too. This is where the state becomes real. The old verdict will try to claim emergency powers. It will say, now you must panic. Now you must abandon the end. Now the old identity has been proven. Pause, gather the facts, take the necessary step, but do not let fear write identity in permanent ink. The fulfilled state can meet contradiction without surrendering the throne. Before closing, choose one sentence for tonight. Let it be short enough to carry into sleep and strong enough to interrupt the courtroom tomorrow. Perhaps, I do not accept fear's verdict. Perhaps, my inner speech belongs to the fulfilled state. Perhaps, I speak within as one already chosen. Say it slowly. Feel where the body resists. Let the sentence meet that place without force. A new state often begins as a quiet phrase spoken faithfully in the place where the old verdict used to win. A subtle form of inner speech is the caption placed under other people. Someone looks tired and the old caption says, they are disappointed in me. Someone takes time to answer and the caption says, I am losing them. Someone succeeds and the caption says, there is less for me. These captions are not facts. They are assumptions in sentence form. Change the caption and the relationship to the moment changes. Another form is the caption placed under the self after a mistake. The old voice says, this is who you are. The chosen voice says, this is something to correct from who I now choose to be. The first sentence fuses error with identity. The second keeps responsibility without surrendering the state. That distinction can save a day from becoming a sentence. The practice can be brought into walking. With each step, let a simple inner line match the rhythm of the body. I walk from the end. I speak from the end. I choose the state. The words do not have to be many. The body learns through repetition tied to movement. A sidewalk can become a chapel of assumption when the inner voice is reclaimed there. It can also be brought into silence. Sometimes the fulfilled state does not need words after the correction is made. A sentence opens the door, then silence lets the state breathe. Do not keep talking inwardly from anxiety. Speak the chosen line, feel its authority, and let quiet follow. Quiet is often the sound of the courtroom being dismissed. If the old voice has been especially cruel, tenderness is required. Do not answer cruelty with more cruelty about having been cruel. That only changes the costume of the prosecutor. Let the new voice be firm and kind, firm enough to end the verdict, kind enough for the body to trust it. This combination of firmness and kindness is often the signature of the fulfilled state. The final movement is to notice which sentence wants to become tomorrow's first thought. Tonight, plant it deliberately. Let sleep carry the chosen verdict into the deeper mind. In the morning, before the old courtroom convenes, repeat it once. Then rise as if the sentence has jurisdiction. There is one more place in a speech hides. In the word always, I always get ignored. I always run out. I always ruin it. The word always turns a moment into a prison. Replace it carefully. Sometimes this has happened, but it is not my law. This moment is asking for a new state. That small linguistic shift removes eternity from the old condition and returns choice to the present. The word never has the same effect. I never get picked. I never know what to say. I never recover. These are not observations, they are decrees. A Neville-inspired practice treats decrees with reverence because the mind tends to inhabit what it repeatedly declares. If a decree is not worthy of the desired life, it should not be allowed to pass as casual self-talk. Try catching always and never for one day. Do not become tense about it. Simply notice. Each time one appears, ask whether it belongs to the fulfilled state. If not, revise the sentence on the spot. This is not wordplay. It is state selection at the level of language, where identity often enters unnoticed. The private courtroom may not close in one day. That is all right. Courts built over years may adjourn gradually. The victory is not perfect silence. The victory is a new authority. Fear may still file objections, but it no longer writes every ruling. The chosen voice becomes familiar, then credible, then natural. This is the final dignity of inner speech. No one else has to hear it for it to matter. A sentence spoken privately can save the tone of a conversation. A sentence spoken privately can prevent an old spiral. A sentence spoken privately can let sleep arrive without another argument. Hidden words shape visible life through the state they keep alive. So tonight, before sleep, listen for the verdict and change the judge. Let attention sit higher than fear. Let imagination present the fulfilled identity. Let the I am wear the name that belongs to the desired state. Then rest. The next day may bring facts, but facts will be met by a different inner court. If only one part of this episode is remembered, let it be this. The state is often selected before the event is interpreted. The event appears and the inner voice names it. That naming becomes the doorway. Change the naming and you change the doorway. This is why private speech matters so much. It stands between fact and identity. A fact without the old verdict has more room inside it. A delay can be a delay. A bill can be a bill. A silence can be silence. A mistake can be corrected. The old voice removes that room by rushing to identity. The chosen voice restores room, and in that room, imagination can move. So the practice is not ornamental. It is the daily discipline of refusing false sentences about the self. It is the refusal to let fear become narrator, judge, and historian. It is the willingness to speak inwardly from the end until the end feels less like a distant hope and more like the natural address of the mind. Tonight, the courtroom can become quiet. The old case does not need another hearing. The desired state can speak softly and be accepted. Let that be enough for one night. Let the verdict of the fulfilled self be the sentence that follows you into sleep. The next time the old sentence begins, do not fear it. Recognize it. A recognized verdict is already weaker than an unconscious one. Then let the chosen sentence answer without strain. This is the quiet revolution of inner speech. The old voice may still enter, but it no longer owns the room. From that room, the day can be lived differently. A message can be answered without collapse. A bill can be opened without becoming a prophecy. A silence can be allowed without self-abandonment. The state changes because the speech within has changed its allegiance. This is why the work feels small but reaches deep. The sentence inside is not decoration. It is the doorway through which the self enters experience. Guard that doorway with tenderness and let the fulfilled state be the voice that is welcomed home. If the old verdict returns tomorrow, meet it as a familiar visitor, not as a ruler. It can knock, but it does not receive the chair of authority. The chosen sentence may be quiet, but quiet authority is still authority. Let that authority become ordinary. Let it speak while making coffee, opening doors, and answering messages. A state that can survive ordinary moments is a state that can become life. This is where inner speech stops being theory and becomes a lived spiritual discipline, repeated gently until the inner home feels unmistakably new, steady, embodied, deeply practiced, and worthy of trust.